The Whispering Woods. In a small, secluded village surrounded by dense forests, there was a legend known to every villager. The Whispering Woods, as it was called, was a place no one dared to enter after dusk. The trees there were ancient, their gnarled branches intertwining like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. The villagers believed that spirits of the past roamed these woods, whispering secrets to those who dared to listen. Amelia, a young woman new to the village, had always been curious and skeptical of such tales. She had recently moved into an old cottage on the edge of the Whispering Woods, seeking solace after a heartbreak. The villagers warned her about the woods, but Amelia brushed off their warnings as mere superstition. One chilly autumn evening, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village. Amelia, feeling particularly restless, decided to take a walk to clear her mind. She found herself at the edge of the Whispering Woods, the dense canopy above blocking out what little light remained. Despite the growing darkness, she felt an inexplicable pull towards the trees. Ignoring the voice in her head telling her to turn back, Amelia stepped into the woods. The air was thick and heavy, and an eerie silence enveloped her. She walked deeper, the path becoming less defined with each step. As she ventured further, she began to hear faint whispers, barely audible at first, but growing louder and more distinct with every step. The whispers seemed to come from all around her, a cacophony of voices overlapping and blending together. She could not understand what they were saying, but she felt a chill run down her spine. Her breath quickened, and she glanced around, trying to locate the source of the whispers. The trees seemed to close in on her, their branches reaching out like bony fingers. Suddenly, she saw a figure standing in the shadows ahead. It was a man, his face obscured by darkness. He beckoned to her, and despite her fear, Amelia felt compelled to follow. As she approached, the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. She could now make out individual voices, each one telling a story of pain and sorrow, of lives lost and dreams shattered. The man led her to a clearing, where the moonlight broke through the canopy, casting an eerie glow. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone altar, covered in moss and vines. The whispers stopped abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence in their wake. The man turned to Amelia, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You should not have come here," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness. Amelia's heart raced as she tried to speak, but no words came out. The man stepped closer, and she could see his face now pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into her soul. "This place is cursed," he continued. "The spirits are trapped here, bound by the sins of the past. They seek to escape, and they need a living soul to do so." Panic surged through Amelia as she realized the danger she was in. She turned to run, but her feet felt like lead. The whispers returned, louder and more frantic than before. She could feel the spirits closing in, their icy fingers brushing against her skin. The man reached out and touched her forehead, and a wave of cold washed over her. Her vision blurred, and she felt herself being pulled into darkness. The last thing she heard was the sound of her own voice, joining the chorus of whispers. The villagers found Amelia the next morning, lying unconscious at the edge of the Whispering Woods. She was pale and cold, her eyes wide open but unseeing. They carried her back to the village, but she never spoke again. The whispers had claimed her, and she became a part of the legend of the Whispering Woods. To this day, the villagers warn newcomers about the woods, telling them to never venture into the forest after dark. And if you listen closely on a quiet night, you might just hear the whispers of those who dared to enter and never returned. The Shadow on Maple Street. Maple Street was a picturesque neighborhood, filled with charming houses and friendly neighbors. But beneath its serene facade lay a dark secret, one that would forever haunt those who uncovered it. It all began one crisp autumn evening when Sarah and her family moved into their new home at 56 Maple Street. The house, a beautiful Victorian, had been on the market for years, despite its immaculate condition. The previous owners had left without a trace, leaving the house fully furnished. Sarah, her husband Tom, and their two children, Emily and Jake, were thrilled with their new start. But soon they would come to regret their decision. On their first night, as Sarah unpacked the last of the boxes, she noticed something peculiar. There was a small door in the basement, almost hidden behind a stack of old newspapers. Curious, she opened it, revealing a narrow staircase leading down to a dark cellar. The air was damp and cold, and an unsettling feeling washed over her. She quickly closed the door, deciding to explore it another day. As days passed, strange occurrences began to unfold. Sarah would hear faint whispers at night, though the source remained elusive. Emily and Jake complained of nightmares, vivid and terrifying. They spoke of a shadowy figure watching them from the corners of their rooms. Tom dismissed it as the children's overactive imaginations, but Sarah felt an uneasy presence lingering in the house. One evening, while Sarah was preparing dinner, the power went out. The house plunged into darkness, save for the dim light of the moon filtering through the windows. Tom went to check the fuse box in the basement, taking a flashlight with him. Minutes passed, then an hour, and Tom hadn't returned. Sarah called out to him, but there was no response. With growing concern, she grabbed a candle and made her way to the basement. As she descended the stairs, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They seemed to be calling her name. She reached the bottom and found Tom standing motionless, staring at the small door she had discovered days earlier. His eyes were wide with fear, his face pale. "Tom," Sarah whispered, but he didn't respond. She touched his arm and he snapped out of his trance. "We need to leave this house," he said, his voice trembling. "There's something evil here." Before they could move, the basement door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The whispers grew into a cacophony of voices, echoing around them. A chilling breeze swept through the basement, extinguishing the candle. In the darkness, Sarah felt an icy hand grip her shoulder. She screamed, and Tom pulled her towards the staircase. As they stumbled up the stairs, the whispers transformed into a guttural growl. The door at the top refused to budge. Desperate, Tom kicked it open, and they burst into the hallway, gasping for breath. They gathered Emily and Jake, and without looking back, fled from the house. The family moved to a nearby town, never speaking of what had happened. The house on Maple Street remained vacant, a haunting reminder of the terror they had escaped. Years later, a new family moved in, drawn by the charm of the old Victorian. They, too, discovered the small door in the basement. And so, the cycle of fear continued, as the shadow on Maple Street waited patiently for its next victims, whispering their names in the darkness.